Hey guys, Kira here. Welcome back to the channel. So today marks 5 years since I first moved to Japan. On March 17th into March 18th, because of time changes, I moved to Japan back in 2018. So I figured it would be a good time to do a Q&A. I don't think I've really done one of those on the channel. On my last YouTube video, I asked you to put down in the comments some questions that you might have, and I also asked on my Twitter. So I will be going through the YouTube questions first, then I will move on to Twitter ones. So let's start with Anime. I love that name, Anime. Congrats on the 5 years. Are there any Japanese habits you've picked up that you wish America had? As an example, I've heard that some people dig carrying around hand towels for public bathrooms in Japan rather than using hand dryers like we have in the US. This is definitely true. I actually also like to carry around a little towel because you'll go into restrooms in Japan and they won't have like paper towels. A lot of bathrooms won't have the hand dryers. Now, a lot of Japanese bathrooms started to install the hand dryers, but when COVID happened, a lot of them were put out of order or just like unplugged and not working because I guess they didn't want like virus to circulate through that or something. Not really sure how that works. But anyway, a lot of people just bring hand towels, which I'm assuming is more environmentally friendly anyway, because you're not just using a bunch of paper towels. So I always carry around a little hand towel with me when I go out in public. But to answer your question as to what I think Americans should adopt from Japanese habits, it would definitely be not wearing shoes inside of the house, which you've probably heard people talk about a million times before. But before I came to Japan, I was germophobic, and I think Japan made me more germophobic because I just think about going out in public with my shoes and like going into public bathrooms, just going everywhere, and then coming back to my house and dragging all that stuff into my house. That is not appealing to me at all. So I like how clean my floors stay here in Japan. When I went back to the US, I kept just taking my shoes off because I just like could not take my shoes off before I go into someone's house or into a community building or a church. Like, you always take off your shoes. I've even gone so far as to have bathroom slippers. In Japan, you'll often see people in houses, churches, community centers, hostels, hotels, put bathroom slippers right in front of the bathroom door or right in front of the bathroom stalls, and then you take off whatever shoes you're wearing or your slippers and you slip on the bathroom shoes. And yeah, a lot of people have these inside of their house too, so that you're not tracking like anything that's in the bathroom out into your living spaces. And so I also have some bathroom slippers as well for my house, and I didn't for a while, but then every time I would go to a Japanese friend's house, they would have the slippers, and I just felt like this is a habit I want to pick up, so I did. The next question is from Kita. We have similar names. Thanks for your video. I've been self-studying Japanese for about 9 months now. I've learned a lot, but of course there's still so much to learn. I lose motivation sometimes, but I come back to it because I absolutely love the language. It's definitely the hardest thing I've decided to learn so far in my life, but I'm having fun with it. I was wondering if you've felt the same, if you've ever felt the same. Also, because you live in Japan, has it been easier for you to absorb the language because of your surroundings? I'd love to visit Japan someday. Thank you for your time. Oh my goodness, I definitely do feel like that sometimes. I've definitely been there where I felt really discouraged, specifically after I took the JLPT level N4. So there's 5 levels, N5 being the easiest, N1 being really hard. And I kept failing the N4, which is on the easier side, and I felt really, really discouraged. And I think it's the easiest time to feel discouraged about Japanese, at least so far in my own journey, is near the beginning, because there's so many humps you have to jump over and so much grammar that seems like so impossible to understand because it's so different than English that I just never thought I was going to be able to do it. But once I got over those speed bumps, like once I got over what I thought were some of the toughest parts of Japanese, now I feel a lot more confident and I feel like, oh yeah, like I can learn Japanese, like I can totally do this. So I've definitely felt like that before. And then you also asked, has it been easier for you to absorb the language because of your surroundings? Yes, absolutely. Actually, going to the grocery store, I learn like at least 2 new kanji every week that I go to the grocery store because I like to cook a lot. So there's a lot of ingredients that I need to buy, and a lot of ingredients is listed in kanji. So there are kanji that I've memorized just by cooking and going to the grocery store versus actually learning them in a book or learning them at school. Definitely easier to absorb it. In fact, whenever I visit America, like I was in America for about 3 to 4 weeks, and then I came back to Japan and I felt like like I could not talk, like I forgot stuff. So if you're not surrounded by it all the time, it does become harder. The next question is from Matt Lamb. Question for the Q&A. What was the biggest culture shock moving from the US to Japan? I really don't have that many major culture shocks But I think as time goes on and on, I just keep thinking about how brutal the work culture here is in Japan. I mean, you're talking like people willingly working 80 hours a week, which is crazy to me. And there's a lot of younger kids, like elementary schoolers, high schoolers, junior high schoolers. They don't really get to see their parents much because their parents are workaholics. There's a lot of workaholics in Japan. And for example, I talk to like my coworkers or my boss at an old preschool that I used to work at, and they'll say, oh, well, what are you doing after your shift today? I'm like, I'm going home. I'm like spending time with my husband. That like blows their mind that I have like time to spend like that. And they also always ask me like, oh, you don't work on weekends. Can you like come into the school? Like, just because I have free time on weekends doesn't mean that I want to spend every waking moment of my free time working. And I think that is something that a lot of people here in Japan just don't understand, at least in my experience. But I think a lot of younger people, they understand like the importance of rest and the importance of not overworking. So hopefully that changes because it's really bad here. The next question comes from Sage Raven. He asks, my question for your anniversary video is this: what part of Japanese life intimidated you coming in only to have it turned out way easier in the end? Ooh, I think finding jobs is like way easier than I expected. Now, there are some people that come to Japan and they study, like they get some kind of degree in Japan, but maybe they don't know Japanese very well and they don't have like Japanese citizenship or even Japanese permanent residency, so it's really hard for them to find jobs. But honestly, if you come into Japan and you're okay with English teaching, which there's nothing wrong with, like some people like to say like, oh, you're just an English teacher. Like, would you go up to someone in the US and be like, oh, you're just a teacher? No, like to me, that's a very respected position. The helicopters, they always like to go over my house. So I actually really like teaching English in Japan and working with children. I find no shame at all with saying that, yeah, I work a job in the English field. Some people come to Japan and they don't want to work in that field, and it is nearly impossible for them to get another job unless they really have like a degree in that or some kind of credentials in that field or experience in that field. Like, Japanese companies are not going to hire you as a, like, this is just the cold hard truth, is that Japanese companies are not going to hire you, one, as a foreigner because they're going to have to sponsor your visa. Two, like if you don't know Japanese, they're obviously not going to hire you over someone else. Like, even if your Japanese is really good, they will probably hire someone who is a native Japanese speaker who they do not have to sponsor a visa for over you, even if you have the same credentials as a Japanese person. So keep that in mind. All of this to say is that for me, it's been really easy to find a job. If you set your expectations very realistically. My second year in Japan, I decided that I wanted to work full-time as an assistant language teacher in elementary schools and junior high school. And I remember doing the interview, and the very next hour I got hired. I got sent a contract to sign, so that was easy. There's websites in Japan where you can put like your name and like your contact information and experience that you have teaching, or just like if you're a native English speaker and you put your information on a teacher website, there will be people that will contact you and want you to work at their English schools. Now, not all of these jobs are necessarily great jobs, but you'll never be without a job in Japan if you are an English speaking foreigner. Even if you're like a non-English speaking foreigner, I think there's always jobs that can be offered to foreigners. At every job I've worked at in Japan, it's come so easily, like on the spot, hired. Didn't even need to do anything, had to pull like no strings. Moving on to the Twitter questions, Maki Mama asks, which prefecture have you enjoyed visiting the most during your time in Japan? It is 100% Hokkaido. I have so many videos on Hokkaido, and I think the second prefecture would be Miyagi. But back to Hokkaido, it's just the best place in Japan for food, like the potatoes, the dairy, the zangi, the alcohol. It's all good. Like, Hokkaido has everything that's so good. And you know it's true when you go to the grocery store and so many of the food products in Japan say that they're from Hokkaido. Hokkaido is also really big, so it takes a long time to do Hokkaido. Some people can spend 1 or 2 days in a prefecture and be totally done. But Hokkaido is so big that you don't have to worry too much about getting bored too quickly. Like, I've been to Hokkaido, I think 5 times now, and there's still half of the prefecture I haven't even discovered yet, never even been there. The weather in Hokkaido is wonderful. I'm a winter person. I like a lot of snow. It snows very heavily in Hokkaido. There's skiing, there's the snow festival. Summer there is really nice too because it's a little bit cooler, so you're not dying like you are down here in Kanto, Japan. Just a beautiful, beautiful place. There's so many videos on my channel about Hokkaido. You're gonna see why I love Hokkaido the best. The next question is from Crystal. Do you see yourself living in Japan for the foreseeable future, or will you return to the US someday? Yeah, it's returning to the US is not even on my radar at the moment, and I would never say never because you never know what's going to happen, but I'm very happy living here. The job stability here is really good for me and my husband. My husband is a major in English, like teaching English as a second language and phonetics and stuff like that, so his credentials, his resume looks very good to Japanese schools, and I think no matter what happens, like he will always be able to get a job very easily. So that is very reassuring here in Japan. Rent is cheaper here in Japan. I have like a 2-bedroom apartment with, as far as Japanese apartments are concerned, it's pretty big. Like I feel definitely very comfortable in this apartment, and it costs me like $450 a month, which is, I've never paid that little for an apartment in the United States. It is fair to say that the pay for a lot of jobs is better in the US compared to Japan, but the cost of living, at least the way that me and my husband live, is less expensive, so that balances out. The healthcare is really cheap here. I can go to the dentist, get a whole cleaning, get x-rays, check for any plaque, check for any cavities, and it's like less than $15 okay? Like I cannot do that in the States at all. Every time I go to have an eye exam, I'm always like, that's all I have to pay for. Like to get a contact prescription, a full eye exam to make sure there's nothing wrong, it's like $10. I just cannot beat that. I also just love traveling Japan. I feel very safe in Japan. Personally, I know that like not anywhere is 100% safe. Sometimes for women it's not so safe. But so far I feel very much okay going to Tokyo at night and walking around. In the countryside I definitely feel safe. I've never really felt unsafe here, so for all those reasons I will continue to live in Japan, but I mean I still do love America and I do like to go visit America, but it's not on my radar at the moment for going back. The next question is from Luke Thacker. What's the most difficult thing about living in Japan? Man, if we're talking about Japan just like not as a society, it's definitely the weather. The heat in the summer can be really bad, and a lot of Japanese homes aren't insulated, so the heat just gets in really, really badly. And like my apartment, a lot of Japanese apartments, they don't have central air, so you only have one room with an air conditioner in it, so you kind of have to like close off other parts of your house and just kind of stay in that one room during the summer, and it can be really brutal. As far as Japanese society is concerned, like the hard things with that, well, language aside, language is obviously one of the most hard like things ever, but as far as society, Japanese society, it's definitely the work culture. It's so brutal. Next question is from Alec and Stuff. Hi! Alec and Stuff says, has your sense of belonging / integration into Japanese society changed over the 5 years you've lived there? If so, how? Yeah, when I first got here, I was a young 24-year-old that just really had no idea what I was getting into. And I didn't really have this sense of like, I want to belong in Japan. Like, Japanese people will accept me. Like, I honestly did not care. Like, I kind of just wanted to come here for a fun life, and I wanted to be able to indulge in my hobbies and learn Japanese, and that's exactly what I've been able to do. And of course I like want to make Japanese friends, but a lot of the Japanese friends that I've made don't fit into Japanese society either. There are people who are American who come here and then they learn the language really well, they adapt to Japanese society really well, and they like that, like they like integrating into Japanese society, but it's not really a thing that I feel like I need to do. Like, to Japanese people, I will always be a foreigner, and that's okay. Like, I've totally accepted it. Like, I'm not going, I never came here wishing to be accepted. And I think it helps that like when you're into nerd culture, you're already kind of an outsider, you're already kind of a weirdo, so I'm just carrying that with me to Japan, so it's not really that big of an issue. On Twitter, Hyperactive Hero asks, how does life in Japan, at least where you've been, differ now versus pre-COVID? What are some new things visitors should know? Oh my goodness, so much has changed in Japan because of COVID. A lot of bad and some good. It's funny that you asked this just now because this week, the mask mandate, it wasn't really a mandate, it was more like a suggestion, but everyone in Japan wears masks. Masks were a thing in Asia. This is something that a lot of people don't understand. They'll look at pictures of Japan now and be like, well, why are people still wearing masks? Like, are they scared? It's like, no, this has literally been Asian culture for decades to wear a mask. Like, it's not to go off on that tangent, but as far as things that are different, I do think that some establishments in Japan, like maybe some like mom and pop restaurants or stores, they'll probably ask you to put on a mask if you go into their store. I know people who have flown over to Japan that while the airline doesn't have like mask rules, if they sit next to a Japanese person, I have heard of Japanese people asking people to wear masks next to them. So just be prepared for that. That'll be a little bit different. There is hand sanitizer everywhere, which I love so much. I freak out about like touching products when I'm shopping, and I like to have hand sanitizer everywhere so I can like kind of wash my hands after. I think before tourism opened up, there was a lot more differences. Like, a lot of places were strict. There was a limit on how many people could be in one place at a time. One of the craziest ones is like at sports games and at live concerts, you could not sing, you could not shout, like you couldn't say anything, like you just had to be quiet. So like I've been to concerts in Japan during everything where you couldn't be like, yeah, or sing the song. It's just like, it's so weird. That's the weird part. But I mean, I was alright with it. It was still fun. As far as anything that visitors should know, just be respectful. I mean, just kind of like see what other people are doing. Ask someone if it's okay. Maybe like, do I need to wear a mask here? Is it okay not to wear a mask? Like, just don't throw a fit. You're just gonna look so stupid. Ryan Dreesen asks, what's the current state of foreign travel to Japan? Restrictions, things you should be aware of when planning. Related, what are the best and most reliable resources when planning a Japan trip? So yeah, Japan, it's open. Oh my god, here it comes. I did a video about my experience returning to Japan in early 2022 when restrictions were very, very strict. You can watch that video if you're curious as to how strict it was. Now, fortunately, foreign travel is welcome, and I think until like May 8th, there's still some things like you have to get tested, you have to make sure you have your vax cards and stuff like that. There are websites that you can check out to like double make sure that you have everything you need before you come to Japan. This coming summer, none of that's going to matter. It's just going to be a lot easier to travel to Japan, so not really any restrictions as far as I know. You just got to kind of like look that kind of stuff up, because even if I tell you, I could be wrong. What are the best, most reliable resources? My favorite app actually to book hotels with is Booking.com, which a lot of you probably already know about because you use it in America, but Booking.com has a lot of hotels. Like almost every hotel in Japan will have like their booking certificate, Booking.com certificate that has like, oh, we're like 9 out of 10 stars and so on. So this is a really popular app that even people in Japan use to book hotels. I basically exclusively use it to book hotels unless there's a specific place I want to stay that doesn't have a Booking.com listing. I think between Booking.com and Google Maps are probably your best bets. Now, Google Maps can be your best friend or your worst enemy because sometimes it's not entirely accurate. So especially in the countryside, what I like to do is if you're going somewhere like to a specific city, type that city into Google and find their official website, and then you'll see like access. You can Google Translate it. You can look at the access area of that town's website, and you can see their bus schedules. And unfortunately, a lot of these bus schedules are in Japanese, which can be hard, but there will be timetables, so at least that can help you. My friend Nick on Twitter asks, as proud as I am of how far you've grown as a person and a friend, I don't think you've spoken about this a lot, but what were some of the changes that you had to make to your understanding of nutrition living in Japan and some of the challenges it presented to your diet and weight loss? So, if you don't know, I actually have lost 35 pounds since living in Japan, and let me tell you, it was not just because I lived in Japan or like moved to Japan. I actually had to make changes. Some people think that they can come to Japan and they just lose weight, and that actually happens to some people. Like, some people come here and they walk a lot, they eat differently, they eat more healthily, and they lose a lot of weight. For me, I was eating like Family Mart candy bars and convenience store candy bars and Family Mart family chicken all the time and not exactly eating healthily. Even though I was biking to work for like 20 minutes all the time, I started to get really annoyed that I would go to secondhand shops in Japan and I literally could not fit in any of the clothes. Basically, Japan's sizes, they have this really popular size called F, and it means free size, and this just means one size fits all. Yeah, one size fits all for like the Japanese physique, so really tiny and petite. If I went to a clothes rack, maybe over 60 to 70% of the clothes would be free, and I knew I wouldn't be able to like wear the free fitting clothes. And there's such small sections for like larges, and it says LL, which is like large, like is like the extra large or whatever. And you kind of have to think Asian sizes, it goes down 1 or 2 sizes from American sizes. So like for example, a large in Japanese sizes could be a small or a medium in American sizes. So there would be times where like I could only wear the extra large clothes in Japan, and like they might have like 2 items in a huge secondhand shop that are, you know, extra large. So that got really discouraging, and I got really annoyed, and I kind of just like was like, well, I want to lose weight because I want to be able to fit into the clothes here, but then I'm kind of like glad I did it for health reasons, because I wasn't like dying or anything. But I do feel better now. I do feel healthier now. I don't try to eat a large fry at McDonald's every time I go to McDonald's. I've really tried to not eat sweets so much. I try not to eat candy bars for breakfast, lunch, and dinner all the time. So it ended up being like an actual good, healthy change. And now I can fit in most Japanese larges, which is better than not fitting in anything at all. As far as my understanding of nutrition, it was mostly just like I don't need to eat sugar all the time. And I was not one of those people that was gonna come to Japan and eat salads and like Japanese vegetables all the time. Like I've always lived near McDonald's, and I have no shame. Like I will eat McDonald's. Like I am not one of those like cute fairy girl types. Like not to be like I'm not like the other girls, because that's lame, but I'm not like one of those like little tiny fairy girls that's like, oh, I could never eat at McDonald's. Like I will eat 15 chicken nuggets. I don't care. I think that's all the questions. Overall, I've been very, very happy with my time here in Japan over the last 5 years. I do think my life has gotten better since I moved to Japan, and it's not necessarily like Japan that did it. It's just like growing older, growing more mature, wiser, blah, blah, blah. Anyway, guys, that's it for the Q&A video. Let me know if you're interested in these types of videos in the future, like this video if you liked it, and I'd love to read your comments on anything you have to say. Also, I want to remind you guys that I do have a Patreon, and I do type monthly little scripts on there that say what the future of the channel is. I often will upload videos that are for Patreon users or talking to Patreon users, so if you're interested in that, you'll also get your name put at the end of the video. I'll put the little image here that I have of it. So yeah, shout outs to you if you decide to support my Patreon. It all just basically goes to me being able to do stuff for the channel. Anyways, thank you for watching, and I'll see you in another video. Bye!